Have you ever felt that look? That moment frozen in time when a married man's eyes meet his and something inexplicable happens? A second that seems to last an eternity where you ask yourself, am I imagining things? Let me tell you something disturbing. This look is no accident. Carl Jung, the psychologist who unraveled the deepest secrets of the human mind, discovered that behind every gaze lies a hidden universe of repressed desires, unresolved shadows, and truths that the conscious refuses to admit. That man who looked at you at the cafe, at work, at the gym, he may not even consciously know what he is doing, but your unconscious knows, and it's screaming a message that you need to decode. In this video, I'm going to reveal the 8 hidden meanings behind that gaze, meanings that most people will never discover. Get ready, because what you're about to learn is going to completely change how you interpret human interactions. 1. The look of the projected shadow. When a married man looks at you in a way that makes your heart race, what's really going on has nothing to do with you specifically. Jung taught us that we all carry a shadow, that part of ourselves that we hide, deny, and lock up in the basement of our psyche. They are the desires that we consider inadequate, the impulses that we find shameful, the needs that we learn to repress from childhood. This man isn't necessarily seeing you for who you really are. He is casting his shadow on you. You become a blank canvas where he draws everything he had to suffocate to be the responsible husband, the exemplary father, the serious professional. Perhaps he has abandoned his spontaneity, his boldness, his ability to live in the present moment. And when he looks at you, it's not you he sees. It's the version of himself that he had to kill to fit into the social mold. The intensity of this gaze comes from the fact that he is recognizing, even without knowing it, lost parts of himself. You can represent the freedom he gave up, the adventure he exchanged for security, the passion that grew cold with the routine of the years. Marriage for many men means the death of certain possibilities. They choose one path and all other paths close. The shadow is born precisely from these untrodden paths. Jung realized that the more we deny our shadow, the more power it gains over us. This man may have spent years being faithful, correct, predictable, but the shadow doesn't die, it just waits in the depths, growing and growing stronger. And then you appear. It can be something in the way you laugh, move, talk, something that wakes up that part of him that is hungry for recognition. The danger here is not moral, it is psychological. When someone projects their shadow on you, they are transferring responsibility. He is not dealing with his own internal issues, he is putting on you the weight of carrying what he cannot integrate. You become the depository of his unfulfilled dreams, and this creates an unhealthy dynamic. He may begin to idealize you in ways that are completely disconnected from reality, attributing magical qualities to you that you never had. The projection of the shadow also explains why sometimes these gazes are accompanied by an almost aggressive intensity. It is not pure desire, it is materialized inner conflict. He desires you and resists you simultaneously, because you represent both the temptation and the threat to the structure of life that he has built. You are the embodiment of potential chaos, of the transformation he fears, of the truth about himself that he does not want to face. The real psychological work would be for him to integrate his shadow, to recognize that those desires, impulses, and needs are part of him, and to find healthy ways to express them within the life he has chosen. But this requires courage and self-knowledge that most do not have. It is easier to project, to fantasize, to look. It's easier to make you the villain or savior of his story than to assume that the conflict is entirely within himself. Understanding this protects you from 2 traps. The first is feeling too special for that look, as if you were really the woman of his dreams. It's not about you. The second trap is feeling guilty, as if you were provoking something. It's not about you either. It's about the internal war he wages with himself, and you just happen to be on the battlefield at the wrong time. 2. The imprisoned anima seeking deliverance. Every man carries within him an unconscious, female figure that Jung called Anima. It is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, the bearer of creativity, sensitivity, intuition, and the capacity for deep emotional connection. The anima is the one that allows a man to access his subtlest emotions, his imagination, his rich and complex internal world. But here's the problem. Most married men have imprisoned their anima. They locked it in the name of practicality, productivity, the role of provider. Society teaches men to be rational, logical, objective. Deep emotions? Weakness, intuition, a woman's thing. Artistic sensibility? Luxury that you cannot have when there are bills to pay. Over time, anima starves inside them. When this man looks at you, his imprisoned anima recognizes a possibility of breathing again. You're not just an attractive woman. You're the embodiment of anima himself trying to come back to life. He projects onto this external feminine image everything that has lost contact internally. The lightness, the spontaneity, the connection with emotions, the ability to simply be without having to do or produce. Many marriages die precisely because the anima was sacrificed on the altar of routine. Man becomes a functional machine. He works, pays bills, fulfills duties, but he has completely lost touch with his inner life. He no longer knows what he really feels. He can no longer have deep conversations. He does not connect emotionally with himself or with his wife. His partner feels like she's married to a robot, and he feels like his life has become an endless list of obligations. Then you show up. And without doing anything special, just by existing authentically, you awaken that hunger for true connection. His gaze carries a silent plea. Help me feel alive again. Help me remember that there is more to life than responsibilities and predictability. Show me that I'm still capable of feeling something genuine. This explains why these looks often come from men who seem to have it all. Stable marriage, children, solid career, financial comfort. From the outside, the perfect life. From within, an emotional desert. The imprisoned anima is not content with material security. It needs beauty, mystery, connection, meaning. She needs to feel alive. The big mistake would be to think that you can save this man who may be the key that frees your anima. It cannot. This is an internal work that only he can do. If he does not do the work of reintegrating his own internal feminine energy, he will just jump from projection to projection, always looking for in external women what he needs to find within himself. Jung warned that when the anima is not consciously integrated, it becomes destructive. Man begins to act in irrational ways, makes impulsive decisions, destroys stable relationships through fantasies that will never come true. The neglected anima takes revenge, and this revenge often manifests itself in midlife crises, extramarital affairs, or deep depressions that no one can explain. His look carries all this complexity. It's not just physical attraction, it's a cry from the soul asking to be reconnected with its own wholeness. He's lost touch with essential parts of who he is, and when he sees you, something about him recognizes an opportunity for healing. But that healing will not come from you. It can only come from within. The real solution would be for him to learn to dialogue with his own anima, to honor his emotional needs, to create space for sensitivity and creativity in his everyday life. It would be cultivating relationships where you can be vulnerable, where you can express what you really feel without fear of judgment. But it requires a courage that few men develop, the courage to challenge the standards of masculinity that have imprisoned them since they were boys. If you want to completely master Jungian psychology and understand the deepest secrets of the human mind, I created the Jung method, a complete method that will teach you everything about archetypes, shadow, anima, and individuation. The link is pinned in the first comment. Let's continue. 3. The sleeping adventurer archetype. Within every man there is an adventurer, that archetype that Jung identified as the force that propels us into the unknown, into exploration, into the conquest of new territories, both external and internal. This adventurer is the one who makes us feel alive through risk, novelty, the feeling of discovering something for the first time. It is the part of us that needs challenges, surprises, moments where the heart races because we do not know exactly what will happen next. For many married men, this adventurer is in a deep coma. Marriage brought stability, predictability, and security. Wonderful qualities, but one that can turn into imprisonment when taken to the extreme. Life becomes an infinite cycle of repetitions. Same conversations, same places, same routines, same person every day. The calendar no longer has surprises. Everything has already been mapped, explored, conquered. There are no more uncharted territories to explore. When this man looks at you, the adventurer inside him suddenly wakes up. You represent the unexplored territory. The map still blank, the possibility of a journey that he does not know the end of. It's not necessarily about wanting to betray or abandon your life. It's about feeling that adrenaline rush of being in front of something new, unpredictable, full of possibilities. You are the door to an adventure he thought he would never have again. This look carries a deep nostalgia. He is remembering when life tasted like novelty, when he woke up not knowing exactly how the day would end, when there were still unanswered questions and mysteries to unravel. Before marriage, every encounter was a discovery. Each conversation revealed something new. Each touch was an exploration. Now he knows every reaction, every response, every movement. Predictability killed the adventure. Jung understood that archetypes cannot be ignored indefinitely without serious consequences. The sleeping adventurer doesn't disappear. He just finds twisted ways to express himself. Some men compensate with extreme sports, others with gambling, others with various vices. But the most common way is through fantasy with other women, not because these women are objectively better than their wives, but because they represent the unknown, the unexplored, the not yet conquered. The problem is that this man is confusing external renewal with internal transformation. He thinks he needs a new woman when in fact he needs a new relationship with himself. The true adventurer does not only seek new outer territories, he has the courage to explore the inner territories not yet mapped. He has the courage to surprise himself, to discover aspects of his own personality that he has never examined, to question beliefs that he has carried for decades. The inconvenient truth is that no relationship forever maintains that initial intensity of novelty. It's impossible. The question is, what do we do when the exploration phase ends? Mature men learn to find adventure in the depth, not just on the surface of novelty. They learn that truly getting to know another person is a journey that never ends, that there are always deeper layers to explore, more meaningful conversations to have, more intense connections to build, but it takes a different kind of courage. It is easier to seek the cheap emotion of a new face, a new body, a new story. It's harder to have the courage to be vulnerable with the same person, to explore together the frightening territories of real intimacy, to face the shadows that inevitably emerge when two human beings truly commit to each other. So when he looks at you, understand, it's not you he wants. It's the feeling of being alive again. It is the illusion that there is an easy way out of the existential emptiness he feels. It's the fantasy that starting from scratch with someone new is going to solve the problem, when in reality the problem is that they've stopped growing. They've stopped challenging themselves. They've stopped seeking adventure in the only place where it can be sustainable in the long term, within themselves. 4. The hunger for unsatiated recognition. Every human being has a fundamental need to be seen, recognized, and validated. Jung called this the need for individuation, the profound drive to become who we really are and to be recognized in that authenticity. We don't just want to exist, we want to import. We want to know that our presence makes a difference, that someone notices when we walk into the room, that our absence would be felt if we disappeared. For many married men, this hunger for recognition is not being satiated at home. Over time, they became invisible. His wife no longer looks at him with that twinkle in her eyes that she used to have. She looks through him as if he were part of the furniture. He became the man who fixes things, who brings money, who solves practical problems. But he is no longer the man who arouses interest, admiration, curiosity. He was no longer seen as a fascinating individual and became just a function that someone performs. This invisibility eats away at the soul in ways that words can barely describe. Imagine spending years doing everything right, working hard, being faithful, fulfilling your responsibilities, and still feeling like no one really sees you. Your wife knows your routines, your preferences, your habits, but she stopped really knowing you. He stopped asking questions about his thoughts, his dreams, his concerns. You have stopped showing genuine interest in who you are becoming. Then you show up, and suddenly someone looks at him as if he matters. Someone laughs at his jokes as if they were really funny. Someone leans forward when he speaks, showing genuine interest in what he has to say. Someone notices the details, the new shirt, the haircut, the change in mood. Someone sees you not as a function or a provider, but as a complete, interesting, attention-worthy human being. This look he gives you is not just sexual desire, it's gratitude, it's relief. It's the feeling of finally being recognized after years of invisibility. You're offering something he's desperate to receive. Confirmation that he still exists as an individual, that he's still capable of arousing interest, that his presence still has an impact on someone. Jung understood that when this need for recognition is not met in healthy ways, people seek dangerous shortcuts. Some become workaholics obsessed with professional recognition. Others develop addictions that give them a temporary sense of importance. And many seek validation through the attention of other women, not because they necessarily want an affair or a new relationship, but because they desperately need to feel that they are still seen, that they still matter, that they are still worthy of focused attention. The tragic thing is that often their wives also feel invisible. They also stopped being seen as women and became just mothers, home managers, caregivers. The couple is stuck in a cycle where they both feel unrecognized, but neither has the courage or the tools to break that pattern. So they continue side by side, both starving for recognition but unable to feed each other. When he looks at you with that intensity, he's trying to fill a void that should be addressed within his marriage, but filling that void through you is only a temporary bandage. The real wound remains open. The true solution would require him to have difficult conversations with his wife, to express his emotional needs, to work together with her to rebuild the mutual attention that was lost. But that requires vulnerability, and many men prefer the easy fantasy of being seen by a stranger to the hard work of being seen again by those who sleep next to them every night. 5. The unconscious game of compensation. The human psyche constantly seeks balance. Jung discovered that when our conscious life leans too far to one side, the unconscious automatically works to compensate for this oneness. It's like an internal scale that's always trying to level out. If you over-repress a part of yourself, that part grows in the shadows and eventually takes your place in unexpected and often destructive ways. For the married man who looks at you, this compensation mechanism is operating in full swing. Your conscious life is probably overly structured, controlled, predictable. He knows exactly what he's going to do tomorrow, next week, next year. His choices were made a long time ago and now he simply executes the script. Work, home, family, responsibilities. Everything mapped, everything decided, everything safe, but his unconscious is suffocating under so much control. The psyche was not made to live only in security and predictability. It needs opposing elements, chaos, uncertainty, unresolved possibilities, doors still open. When conscious life completely eliminates these elements, the unconscious begins to produce them artificially through fantasies, impulses and fixations that seem to arise out of nowhere. You become unknowingly part of this game of compensation. Your presence represents everything that is missing from the equation of his life. If he is all responsibility, you become the personification of hot irresponsibility. If it is all commitment, you become freedom incarnate. If his life is all certainty, you are the mystery he can't decipher. The unconscious is using its image to create the necessary counterbalance to the crushing weight of its structured life. The fascinating thing here is that he often chooses women who are the complete opposite of his wife, not because these women are better, but because the unconscious is trying to balance the equation. If the wife is serious, he will look for laid-back women. If the wife is practical, he will fantasize about dreamier women. If the wife is controlling, he will be attracted to more spontaneous women. The attraction is not for the quality itself, but for the compensation it offers. Jung warned that this compensation mechanism, although natural, can become dangerous when it is not consciously recognized. The man begins to believe that he really wants that other woman, that she is his soulmate, that he has found true love, but in reality, it is just being manipulated by the unconscious itself trying to restore balance. If he left the marriage and stayed with the new woman, he would soon find that the unconscious would begin to compensate in the opposite direction, making him miss exactly what he had before. True psychological maturity would come from consciously recognizing this need for compensation and finding healthy ways to integrate it into the life he already has. If life is too controlled, create intentional spaces for spontaneity. If you are too serious, cultivate moments of lightness. If it is too predictable, introduce novelties in ways that do not destroy the entire structure. But this requires deep self-knowledge and the ability to work with paradoxes. Most men don't have these tools, so they live the internal drama without understanding it. They feel divided, guilty, confused. They love their wives but are attracted to other women. They value stability but crave chaos. They want security but they need risk. These contradictions are not moral failings. They are simply the psyche trying to stay healthy through compensation. The look he gives you is loaded with this tension between opposites. He is simultaneously fascinated and frightened, attracted and resistant, desirous and guilty, All these contradictory emotions coexist because the unconscious is trying to balance forces that its conscious life has left completely unbalanced. You are not the solution to this imbalance. You are just the symptom that it exists. If he had Jungian wisdom, he would work to consciously integrate opposites within himself. He would learn to be both responsible and spontaneous, both committed and free, both serious and playful. I would develop the ability to contain paradoxes without having to live them through different people. But few men reach this level of psychological development, so they continue to look outside for what can only be solved within. 6. The nostalgia of the lost self. There is a silent tragedy happening in the lives of many married men. They have completely lost touch with who they were before they took on all these social roles. Husband, father, provider, professional. Each role came with expectations, responsibilities, and behaviors that needed to be adopted. And in the process of wearing all these masks, the real man underneath was forgotten layer by layer, until he disappeared completely. Jung called this over-identification with the persona, the social mask that we present to the world. The persona is necessary and useful, but when we completely identify with it, we lose touch with the true self, with that unique essence that makes us who we really are. Man becomes only the role he plays, forgetting that there is a real person with his own desires, dreams, and characteristics underneath all this social performance. When this man looks at you, what is happening in the depths is a painful recognition. Something in you, in how you move through the world and how you express yourself authentically, awakens dormant memories of who he used to be. Maybe he was also spontaneous one day. Perhaps he also had crazy dreams, intense passions, strong opinions about things that mattered. Perhaps he also lived with less fear of the judgment of others, with more courage to be different, with more fire in his soul. This look carries a devastating nostalgia. It's not nostalgia for you, it's nostalgia for yourself. He is seeing in you a reflection of what was and is no more. The authenticity you exude, even effortlessly, contrasts brutally with the constant performance that has become his life. You simply are, while he has spent so much time being what he should be, that he has completely forgotten what it is like to simply exist without masks. The social construct of masculinity contributes enormously to this loss of self. Men learn from an early age that they cannot cry, they cannot show weakness, they cannot be vulnerable. They learn that they need to be strong providers, problem solvers. They learn that their emotions are inconvenient and must be suppressed. Over time, these lessons turn into layers and layers of repression until man doesn't even know what he really feels about anything anymore. Marriage often accelerates this loss of identity. Not because marriage is bad, but because many men go into it not mature enough to maintain their individuality while building a partnership. They merge completely into the relationship, adapting excessively to the expectations of the partner, the family, society. They abandon hobbies they loved because they are not practical. They give up on dreams because they are irresponsible. They suppress opinions because they cause conflict. They become increasingly pale and diluted versions of who they were. And then you appear. You're not asking anything of him. You're not demanding that he be this or that. You simply exist in your own authenticity. And this creates a painful contrast to the prison he has built for himself. His gaze silently asks, "How do you manage to be so yourself? How are you not afraid? How did you not get lost in all the roles that life imposes?" Jung taught that recovering the lost self is one of the most important tasks of the second half of life. It requires courage to question all the identifications we have built, to remove the masks we have worn for so long that they have begun to stick to the skin, to rediscover desires and dreams that we have buried for decades. It's hard and scary work because it means confronting the fact that we've wasted years living a life that wasn't truly ours. But most men don't do this work. Instead, they project the lost self onto other people, especially on women who seem to have retained that authenticity they sacrificed. They fantasize that being with these women will magically regain that lost part of themselves. They do not realize that no one can give back to you what you yourself have abandoned. The only way to regain the lost self is through the difficult inner work of rediscovery, not through the easy fantasy of starting a new life with someone else. 7. The reflection of forbidden desire. Prohibition has immense psychological power over the human mind. Jung observed that what is forbidden becomes magnetically attractive precisely because it is forbidden. It is not only the object of desire that attracts us, but the very act of transgression. The possibility of crossing a line we have been told never to cross. There is something primal and powerful about challenging limits, even if only in thought. To the married man, you represent the absolutely forbidden territory. He made vows, made commitments, built a whole life based on the promise of fidelity. The whole moral structure of society tells you that looking at another woman like that is wrong. Your conscience, your family, your religion, your values all scream that this is forbidden territory, and precisely for this reason, desire intensifies in ways that he himself cannot fully understand. The forbidden activates primitive parts of the brain that exist long before any moral or social code. They are impulses that come from the depths, from what Jung called the collective unconscious, where instincts that our species has carried for millions of years reside. The desire for sexual variety, the attraction to the new, the impulse to explore beyond established boundaries, all of these are programmed at levels far deeper than any conscious choice or social commitment. This look carries all the tension between civilization and instinct. He chose civilization when he married, when he agreed to suppress his impulses in the name of something greater: family, stability, committed love. But the impulses didn't disappear just because he made a conscious choice. They are still there, pressing against the walls he has built, looking for any crack through which they can escape, if only through a too long look. The guilt he feels only makes everything more intense. There is a psychological phenomenon where trying not to think about something makes you think about it even more. When he forces himself not to look, not to think, not to desire, he is actually feeding his own desire that he tries to suppress. The psychic energy it uses to repress becomes more fuel for what it is trying to repress. It is a vicious cycle that only intensifies the fixation. Jung talked about the need to integrate the shadow instead of just repressing it. Acknowledging that these desires exist does not mean acting on them, but it also does not mean pretending that they do not exist. A mature man can look at his own impulses honestly, can recognize that yes, he is attracted to other women, and yet consciously choose not to act on it. This conscious choice is much stronger than the unconscious repression that eventually explodes. But most men have not learned this skill of integration, so they live torn between what they feel and what they think they should feel, between real desire and the idealized image of themselves as perfectly faithful husbands who never look at another woman. This internal division creates enormous psychological pressure that needs to escape somehow, and it often escapes through these loaded looks, these intense fantasies, this fixation on women who represent everything that is forbidden. The real danger is not the desire itself, but the way it deals with desire. If he simply represses and pretends that he does not exist, the desire grows in the shadows until it becomes something monstrous and uncontrollable. If he rationalizes and convinces himself that it's okay because it's just looking, he's deceiving himself and slowly moving toward greater transgressions. The only healthy way is to honestly acknowledge what you feel, understand the psychological roots of those feelings, and make conscious, mature choices about how to live with them. When he looks at you, he's experiencing all this complexity at once. The desire, the prohibition, the guilt, the temptation, the fear, the excitement, all mixed into a single loaded moment. You have become the living symbol of his inner conflict between instinct and civilization, between freedom and compromise, between what he wants and what he has chosen. It's not about you as a real person. It's about what you represent in his internal psychological economy. You are the embodiment of the forbidden fruit, and like all forbidden fruit, you seem infinitely sweeter precisely because you are out of reach. 8. The connection beyond the golden ring. There is something that transcends all psychological explanations, all archetypes, all projections and compensations. Sometimes, rarely, a married man's gaze carries something different from anything we've discussed so far. It is the disturbing possibility of a genuine connection that should not exist, but exists. Jung believed in synchronicity, in meaningful connections that defy simple causal explanations. Sometimes two souls simply recognize each other. This does not justify anything. It does not make right what is wrong. It does not solve ethical and practical dilemmas, but it would be dishonest to ignore that there is a layer of reality, where deep connections happen regardless of external circumstances, such as marital status. Two people can have a soul-level resonance that doesn't respect the social conventions we've established. It's inconvenient, it's complicated, but it's real. When this genuine connection exists, the look is completely different. It's not predatory, it's not purely sexual, it's not just the projection of unresolved fantasies. It is recognition. It is as if two parts of a whole are meeting through time and space, through all the barriers that life has placed between them. Jung would call this the encounter between two souls at the level of the self, that deepest layer of the psyche where individuality connects with something universal. The man who experiences this is genuinely disturbed. It is not the disturbance of temptation or common guilt. It is a deeper existential disturbance. He feels that he has found something true, something meaningful, something that touches layers of his existence that he did not even know existed. And at the same time, he knows he can't do anything about it. The ring on the finger is not just a metal object. It is a symbol of promises made, of lives intertwined, of responsibilities assumed. This situation has no easy answers. Jungian psychology does not offer ready-made moral solutions, only tools to understand the complexity of the human psyche. A man can genuinely love his wife and still feel a deep connection with another person. These feelings do not cancel each other out. The human heart has the capacity for contradictions that our society prefers to deny. The crucial question is what he does with this connection. Maturity doesn't mean never feeling attracted or connected to other people. Maturity means consciously choosing how to respond to these feelings. It means honoring the commitments you've made, even when possibilities arise that challenge those commitments. It means recognizing that not every connection needs or should be explored to its fullest potential. Jung spoke about the importance of holding the tension of opposites without prematurely resolving the conflict. Sometimes life puts us in situations where there is no perfect solution, where any choice involves significant losses. To hold this tension without running away from it through impulsive actions or convenient rationalizations is an act of tremendous psychological force. It is choosing complexity over simplicity, truth over comfort. For you who receive this look, it is important to distinguish between the different layers we explore. Is it shadow projection or genuine recognition? Is it unconscious compensation or real connection? It is often a mixture of all of these, because the human psyche is too complex to fit into simple categories. But your own intuition, if you pay attention honestly, usually knows the difference between being used as a projection screen and being genuinely seen. If it's real connection, you'll also face tough choices. You can choose to honor your own values, recognize the connection internally without having to externalize it in actions that would cause suffering. You can learn that not every true feeling requires action, that sometimes the greatest wisdom is to leave certain doors closed even when there is something real on the other side. In the end, the gold ring is more than a symbol of restraint. It is a symbol of choices made, of paths taken, of commitments to the growth that comes through fidelity and not through the perpetual search for novelty. Jung believed that true individuation, becoming who we really are, happens through deep commitment and not through constant flight when things get tough or when tempting new possibilities arise. This look, therefore, is a test. For him, it is the test of his integrity, of his ability to feel without having to act, to recognize without needing to possess. For you, it is the test of your own wisdom in distinguishing between what is real and what is projection, between what deserves to be explored and what deserves to be respectfully left unattended. Both are navigating complex territories of the human soul, where there are no perfect maps, only the inner compass of consciousness, and the commitment to doing as little damage as possible in the world.